In this session, let's get into the Azure portal and create a public IP. To get started with creating a public IP in Azure, simply type public IP addresses into the Azure portal search bar and select the service from the results list. To create a new public IP address, you have two options right here on the screen. You can either click the Create Public IP Address button in the middle of the screen or use the Create button at the top of the toolbar. Both options will take you to the same creation wizard where you'll define the name, SKU, assignment type, and region for the public IP. On this screen, I'm creating a new public IP address that I'll later associate with services like a firewall, NAT gateway, or Azure Bastion. I start by selecting the correct subscription and resource group. In this case, I've chosen RG-region 1-networks to keep everything organized within my regional network resources. I then set the region to match my deployment, which is Australia East, so that all resources stay within the same locality for performance and compliance. Next, I move on to the configuration details. I give the public IP a clear and meaningful name like My Firewall PIP to help identify its purpose later. I stick with IPv4, select the standard SKU, and set the availability zone to zone redundant to ensure high availability across zones. For tier, I leave it as regional because I don't need a global IP for this use case. When configuring IP assignment, I always choose static. This is essential when I need a fixed IP address that won't change, especially for security or access control. I also leave the routing preference set to Microsoft Network for optimized routing through Azure's backbone. If needed, I can configure the DNS name label to make the IP address easier to reference, but in many cases, I leave that blank. Once everything looks good, I simply click Review plus Create to validate the settings and deploy the public IP address. Once the configuration is complete, the confirmation screen appears, just like you see here. All the settings are summarized for review. Everything looks good to me. I simply click Create to deploy the public IP address. This is the overview screen for the public IP address resource I just deployed, my firewall PIP. Here, I can see all the essential details about the IP configuration. On the right hand side, I can view the actual public IP address assigned to this resource. In this case, 4.2372.49103. This is the unique IP that external users or services will use to reach whatever Azure service I associate this with, such as a firewall, load balancer, or NAT gateway. Just below that, Azure also provides a DNS name, which is automatically generated based on the DNS label I configured earlier. This DNS name is publicly resolvable and can be used instead of the numeric IP address, making it easier to reference or manage in configuration files. At this point, the IP is created but not yet associated with any resource. I'll do that next depending on my architecture. For example, linking it to an Azure firewall or NAT gateway.